When a billionaire father makes a surprise visit to his daughter's school, he discovers her sitting all alone, completely silent, because of something truly terrifying. What can make a little girl so afraid in a place she's supposed to feel safe? You won't believe what happens next. Mr. Grant, one of New York's wealthiest and most powerful CEOs, decided to pop into his daughter Emily's elementary school one sunny afternoon. He imagined her face lighting up with joy, a big hug, the perfect father-daughter moment. But the scene that greeted him was a living nightmare. As he peered into a classroom, he didn't see smiles or hear laughter. Instead, he saw his little girl, Emily, huddled behind her desk, her small body trembling. The teacher stood frozen at the front of the room, hair face pale. The other children just stared, their eyes wide with fear. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. He rushed to Emily's side, his heart pounding in his chest. "Emily, sweetie, what's wrong? What happened?" he whispered, his voice full of concern. She whispered back, so quietly he could barely hear her. "Dad, please don't tell anyone what she did." Her small hand pointed subtly towards the teacher. Mr. Grant's concern instantly turned to ice-cold fury. He stood up, his towering presence filling the room, and his gaze locked onto the teacher. "What did you do to my daughter?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. The teacher, flustered, tried to intervene. "Mr. Grant, please, this is a misunderstanding. Emily, let's not bother your father with this." But it was too late. Emily, finding a sliver of courage from her father's presence, slowly pulled up the sleeve of her little pink sweater, and there, on her delicate arm, were dark, ugly bruises, purple and angry. Clearly fresh, a gasp escaped Mr. Grant's lips. The air in the room became thick with tension. The teacher started babbling, her voice high and panicked. "It's not what you think. She fell on the playground. She's clumsy." But the shape of the bruises told a different story. They looked like fingerprints, like someone had gripped her arm with immense force. Mr. Grant didn't say another word. He scooped Emily into his arms, holding her tight, and stormed out of the classroom, leaving the terrified teacher and silent students behind. He went straight to the principal's office. "I want to see the security footage from my daughter's classroom. Right now," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. The principal, clearly intimidated, fumbled with the controls. The footage appeared on the screen. What Mr. Grant saw made his blood run cold. The video showed the teacher, her face twisted in anger, looming over Emily's desk. Emily had her hand raised, clearly asking a question. The teacher suddenly snapped. She grabbed Emily's arm and yanked her violently, pulling her partway out of her seat. The audio picked up the teacher's shrill voice. "I've had enough of your stupid questions, Emily. You will sit there and you will be quiet." The footage showed Emily bursting into tears, shrinking back into her chair as the teacher glared down at her. The rage that filled Mr. Grant was unlike anything he had ever felt. This wasn't just a moment of frustration. This was abuse, pure and simple. But the horror was far from over. As Mr. Grant began digging, demanding to see old records and past complaints, a darker, more sinister picture began to emerge. The principal tried to block him, citing privacy policies and school protocols. But Mr. Grant's legal team was already on their way. They uncovered a mountain of buried secrets. It turned out Emily wasn't the only victim. For years, parents had been lodging complaints against this teacher and several others. Complaints of bullying, of harsh punishments, of physical intimidation. All of them had been swept under the rug. The school administration had been actively hiding a pattern of abuse to protect its reputation. They chose to silence concerned parents and sacrifice the well-being of children rather than face a scandal. The system wasn't just broken, it was corrupt. It wasn't just one bad teacher, it was an entire institution that enabled and protected abusers. Mr. Grant looked at his daughter, who was now clinging to him, her face buried in his shoulder, and he knew what he had to do. Firing the teacher wasn't enough. Reporting the principal wasn't enough. A man with his resources, his power, could do so much more. He wouldn't just fix the problem for Emily. He would tear down the whole rotten structure and rebuild it from the ground up. Weeks later, the news broke and sent shockwaves through the city. The billionaire CEO, Jonathan Grant, had purchased the entire school district. It was an unprecedented move. The first thing he did was clean house. The abusive teacher, the complicit principal, and every single administrator who had a hand in the cover-up were fired immediately. T. Waragoni. But he didn't stop there. He brought in a team of the country's top child psychologists and education experts. They were tasked with a single mission: to create the safest, most nurturing educational environment imaginable. The curriculum was redesigned to prioritize emotional intelligence and critical thinking. New policies were implemented to ensure every single complaint was investigated transparently and thoroughly. Teachers were retrained, focusing on positive reinforcement and compassionate communication. The school was reborn. The hallways that once echoed with fear were now filled with the sounds of genuine laughter. Children who were once afraid to speak up were now encouraged to ask questions, to be curious, to be themselves. And Emily, a few months later, Mr. Grant visited the school again. This time, he didn't find her hiding. He found her in the middle of a group of friends, her hand raised high in the air, a confident and brilliant smile on her face as she debated a topic with her new, caring teacher. She was no longer the silent, trembling girl in the corner. She was thriving. Her father hadn't just saved her. He had given her, and countless other children, a future where they could feel safe, valued, and truly happy. He had turned a father's worst nightmare into a legacy of hope. Thank you so much for watching. What would you have done in Mr. Grant's position? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.